All right, guys, you saw the title. You know what this is all about. This is a 2010 Nissan Murano. This is the SL all-wheel drive edition. I've got it jacked up and pulled the wheels off, but that is as much as I've done to this thing. So I'm going to try to put chapters on this video. I'm going to talk for a little while here, maybe 5 or 8 minutes, and then we'll get into the work. So if you want to hear my thinking about this, just keep on viewing. If you want to see like the actual work involved, skip ahead to the next chapter. So anyhow, what's going on with this thing? Like so many other Muranos, the subframe is rotted out on this thing, and apparently there's 2 real common problems with these things: transmissions and rear subframes. So you can see the condition of this back here. This is all rotted out. Wife mentioned the other day, she's like, she drove it to work. She comes back home. It's making a funny noise when I hit a bump. Well, that's that trailing arm banging on the frame there. So it's toast. I crawled up under it. It's rotted out there. It's rotted out in a couple other spots. So it's unsafe to drive. So I start watching videos on YouTube, and there's a few videos out there, some guys that have done this and documented it, and they're pretty good videos, but it looks like it's going to be a lot of work to do it. A lot of, broken bolts and replacing parts that you may or may not have to, but, it's just old and crusty. So this one also, the lower control arms are pretty rotted. I don't know if you can see that down through there. Getting pretty bad on this one too. So with all that in mind, like, okay, I'm going to be replacing a lot of stuff in here. Let me just see just out of curiosity, what would my local shop charge me? Because I really don't want to do this project. So I take it to the local shop. My guys, they look at it, and I trust these guys. They've been good to me through the years. They come back with $4,130 to do this project. I about had a heart attack. Like, holy cow, man! I didn't think it'd be that much. Yeah, well, we thought, we were going to try to keep it under $3,000, but the deal with these things is all the subframes are rotted out. It's like hen's teeth finding a good used subframe. They're calling around to their local junkyards, or their normal used parts suppliers, for stuff like this. And all the units that their guys have are all rotted out too. So without spending a tremendous amount of time researching that, they then, well, let's just go to Nissan and get a new subframe. Subframes for this thing are $1,600 from Nissan, and Nissan is telling them that you also, if you're going to be doing the subframe on this, you have to do the ABS sensors. There's 2 of them, and they each cost $475. Like, holy cow, that's $950 just in sensors. Like, that's a lot of money, and that's these sensors right here. It's got to be. I mean, it's the only two sensors back here. It's a wheel speed sensor. I guess they're calling that an ABS sensor. So anyhow, I didn't argue with them. Like, I get it. If they got $1,600 in the part plus $950 for the sensors, I mean, you're up over $2,500, and you ain't even got into all the broken bolts and shop supplies, penetrating oil, cutting the muffler out, all the labor involved in too. So yeah, I could see if you're spending $2,500 on the major components, figure another couple $100 on ancillary things that are going to be breaking, and then you're going to have to wait for parts and stuff. Yeah, 41 probably ain't that far out of the ballpark. So I didn't argue with them, but man, I just can't afford to put that much money into a car that on a good day, this thing's worth about $7,000, $6,000, something like that. So I can't put $4,000 into a $6,000 car. That doesn't make sense. But I'm in a pickle because I can't sell the thing. I mean, I could probably shift it on down the road, jerry rig it enough to screw the next guy real bad. But I ain't got that in me. I'm not that guy. So if I sell this thing, I'm going to disclose what's wrong with it. Yeah, it drives. Yeah, you probably wouldn't notice it. I mean, I could probably jerry rig it enough where it wouldn't make no noise. I'm not going to do that. I'm not that guy. I never will be that guy. So I'm going to disclose what's wrong with it, and then it's only worth $500. It's basically worth scrap value. So I go back to YouTube and I'm watching videos like, man, this is a project I don't want to do. The guys that are doing it, like, yeah, they're breaking a bolt here and there, they're replacing a control arm here and there, stuff like that. Like, damn, that really is going to suck to have to. Dropping the assembly doesn't look too bad. Like dropping that whole, the subframe with the drivetrain and all the brakes and all that stuff on it, that whole assembly looks like it'd be pretty easy. It looks like the biggest part of the project is swapping everything over to the new subframe. So I start calling around to my local junkyards. Like, do you got any of these things, and what would it cost me if I pull the whole subframe and drivetrain, keep it one unit, the whole rear end unit? Well, the one place, they're like, yeah, $100 for the subframe, you keep the whole thing together, you pull it, $400, $450, something like that. So I show up, I get there yesterday, got all my tools in the back of the truck, thinking I'm gonna do this project, laying in the dirt and the gravel out in some junkyard, and I'm all by myself. I get there, the car that I had confirmed twice, I'd called them in the last 3 days. Yep, the car's sitting out there, row 143, walk right up to it, no problem. I get there and that car ain't even there. Oh yeah, we crushed that car 2 days ago. Well, thanks a lot, guys. So they had 2 more of them on the lot. I walk over and check them out. They're a different model year. They wouldn't even work, but just out of curiosity, the other 2, one of them is already missing the subframe assembly. Somebody snatched it. It must have been good. And the other one, it's rotted out worse than this one. So, well, crap. I come back home, put all my tools away. I start looking online again, found another parts supplier near me. They pull the part. They're used, and they're a junkyard, but they pull the part for you. So I call them up today, like, here's the situation. I need a subframe, but what about, the guy's like, yep, we got one out there. I said, now these subframes are, they get rotten real bad. The guy's like, yep, I got it here in the system. It says the subframe is good. We already checked it. Okay, well, how much for the subframe? $400. Well, shit. That's cheaper than eBay. eBay's got this subframe, just the subframe, for like $650. Well, okay, 400's cheaper, but I said, now what if you just kept that whole assembly together? Differential, axles, all the way out to the brakes, everything. And, even those, I said, don't chop that sensor wires. I want you to unplug them. I don't want the wires cut or anything. And he's like, well, I'd rather sell it to you like that, because that'd save my guys a lot of time breaking it all down. He's like, I'll tell you what, you take the whole assembly for $650. $650, I said, and it's got a good subframe, and you're not going to cut the wires. Nope, we'll make sure it's in good shape, ready to bolt right up for you, buddy. I said, okay, $650. When do you think your guys could get to it? Well, I'm not very busy this morning. I said, you're kidding me. I can get it today yet? Yeah, we can get it done today. So that's what I did. I figure for all the aggravation and time and possibly breaking bolts and stuff, yeah, I spent a few more bucks to get, all these control arms and brake parts and differential. Yeah, it cost me another $250, but there's a good chance I was going to break these parts and have to order anyhow. So it's got good control arms. Actually, the lower control arms on this one are in way better condition than these are. So I'm coming out ahead there, and for the ease of installation and swapping all these parts over, I don't want to deal with all that crap. So I think this is going to be the way to go. So I'm going to crawl up under this thing. I'm going to have to cut the exhaust. I'll cut it, drop the muffler out, get that out of the way, and I'm going to hose these bolts down, these body mount bolts. I'm going to hose them down with penetrating oil, the bottom shock bolts, everything. See if I can get it loose. Maybe let it sit overnight. Maybe start on it yet tonight. I don't know. And start dropping this thing out of here, and we're just going to drop the assembly out, and we're going to stick a whole assembly in. Now, for you guys that are curious, this is out of a 2009 model, but in the research that I did, 2009 and 10 all-wheel drives have the same subframe. So again, that's a 2010, this is a 2009, but it should have the same subframe. And then my other consideration was, what about the drive line? The differential should be the same from 2009 through 14, so it should be the same differential. And then I'm going to assume that there's no weirdness going on between, you know, any weird gearing issues, you know, from the end of the hub to the differential. That all should be the same. I didn't verify that it's the same part. It should be the same as long as the differential is the same. So I'm hoping that I can just slap this whole unit in there, plug in a couple of electrical clips, and be good. They did cut the brake lines for me, so they didn't even try to, you know, bust those open and break anything. So I'm glad for that. They did cut this hose. I need to investigate this a little bit further. I don't know what the hell that is, to be honest with you. Like I said, I haven't dug into this thing terribly too much. But this subframe, I'm shocked. It's actually, I mean, it's way better than mine. Just a little bit of surface rust on it, paint flaking off a little bit there, but for coming off a used vehicle, I'm tickled to death with it. So it's a lot better condition than the one I got. I'm gonna crawl up under there, get busy, so I'll let you know what I find when I get in there. Okay, so far, here's where we're at. Get your drum or rotor, whatever you want to call that. It's a rotor with a drum, I get it. Anyhow, pop that off. I had to persuade mine with a brass hammer, but once I got it off, then I'm looking at, I got to disconnect my parking brake. So you got this little mechanism here that's pinned on and then clipped on. It's kind of an unusual thing, and it lives between the brake shoes. So you undo that doodad, you just fiddle with it, and you get that little mechanism unpinned. And when you unpin it, then what you're unpinning it from is the end of the parking brake cable. So this is held on to the back of the backing plate with a bolt. That bolt. Once you unbolt it, then the easiest way that I found is to tap, take some long handle like the hammer handle, and tap down from the top, just beat down and then back up a little bit, and that will pop free. It's just in there. It's kind of grungy, and the rust is just kind of holding it in there. So did that. Of course, well, pulled the caliper off too, and I got the caliper just hanging there, you know, but that's just, you know, 2 bolts hold the caliper on. So got the caliper off, got the rotor off, got the parking brake unpinned. Did that on both sides. Then you got to find a good spot to cut your exhaust, and just take a Sawzall, climb up under there, and pick a spot that's going to be easiest to re-weld. So let's crawl up under here. So that's what I did. I figure it was going to be easier. Oh boy, all this light up under here. It's going to be easier to re-weld it up there near the muffler, not right up against the muffler, but near the muffler and away from the gas tank. So when I'm welding, that should give me the most amount of clearance to get my MIG gun in there to weld it, because that's going to be kind of a pain in the butt. Okay, so cut the muffler off, and then, or cut the exhaust off, and it hangs by hangers, these rubber hangers back here. Make sure you lube them up. Once you lube them up, you can fight it off. So that's pretty self-explanatory, just getting it wiggled off there. You actually pull it backwards first and get it off this hanger, and there's another one up here somewhere. Anyhow, you pull it backwards first and get it off the hangers that go forward and backward. Then you pull it off these 2 hangers over here on the driver's side. So that's how that works. So then you pull your exhaust out of there, try not to drop it on your face. And then one other thing you got to do, unclip your, this is those ABS sensors that they want $950 for. Well, unclip those right here. Then you got to pop that support for the wire. You got to pop it out of the subframe there, that little hole, that little white dangling thing. So now this wire is free. It's attached to the bottom of the body. So that's the electrical connector. Oh, there's that other rubber exhaust hanger.
So that's, as far as I can tell, that's the only electrical connector that you need to do. So once you got that, then get the other end of these parking brake here. This parking brake cable. So the cable went in there before, went in through the backing plate there, and it's supported here with a single bolt. So just pop out that support bolt. Same on both sides. Each side, of course, has got a parking brake cable. Then what you're looking at, the next support up for the parking brakes is these little supports here. And you can see that's a steel support affixed to an aluminum heat shield. And I tried to remove that one. And the way that those are fastened, it's riveted. The back of that steel fastener is riveted to that aluminum heat shield, and it just spun that rivet right through that aluminum. So I cannot get that undone. So I'm going to leave it, and it'll mean that fighting these parking brake cables is going to be a little tighter. I'm going to have to get them off this tie rod, or whatever the hell that bar is there, traction bar or whatever. I got to get it from around there. So those, I'm going to leave. Did we talk about the drive shaft? Drive shaft's pretty simple. If the thing's in the right position, if it's clocked easy enough, then you can get to all 4 bolts. I had a little bit of trouble with the one up on top there, but you know, they come. So I sprayed everything down here before I started, you know, trying to break loose bolts and stuff. You can see those are wet. Everything down here I sprayed. So that's pretty much it. Now what I'm looking at is these 4 big mounts. And again, you can see that's wet there. So I got that one. There's one there. And then there's 2 more on this side. And that should be it. Well, I take that back. These you can see. These big mounts back here, or these big bolts back here, you can see those easily. The 2 in the front are hidden. So there it is there. But they're hidden under these little plastic covers. So that cover is up like that. And it's got 3 bolts holding it. It should have 3 bolts holding it. This side only had 2. One of them was broken off already. And then the other side, I broke one of them off, so now they each have 2 that will hold them. But those plastic covers are just, I don't know what they're there for. I guess they're just to keep sand and crap from getting up in there, but boy, they sure don't do a good enough job. So anyhow, now I think, and the shock. So the bottom of the shock, you got to remove, and I'm just leaving the shock dangle. You can see, here's my shock right here, and I just unbolted it. It's 1 bolt through that lower control arm. You can see the nut is welded to the lower control arm. So it's 1 bolt holds that shock on. I'm just going to leave the shock dangle. So now I think I need to get a jack up under here, support the differential, probably be the best place, and then unbolt these big 4 bolts and hope that the bushings aren't stuck to the bolts, and hope that they come right off and nothing breaks, because if those break, well, that's going to make it a whole lot of fun. So I'm going to go ahead and work on that now, and I'll catch you guys up here once I get them broke loose. It's the last one. A couple of brackets I might have to take off up here. I thought I'd be able to leave them on.
came out a whole lot prettier than I thought it would. You guys know how it is. You get crap laying everywhere when you're working. Just kick it out of the way. Man, can you believe it? Can you believe Nissan hasn't issued a recall for this? I mean, yeah, I get that it's, you know, as old as it is, but gee whiz, these things are frames rusted in half on you know, just about all of them. You'd think something would have to be done about that legally. Okay, guys, well, I'm going to swap the, pull these springs out of here. Should just be, let's see, that was the left side. I'll make sure we put it back on the left side. Got a little divot down there. Spring. Spring. Make sure it sits in there and the end of the spring goes in the divot. I noticed this is broken on this one. I don't think it really matters, but I'm going to see if I can swap that little plastic fitting out of this one and put it in that one. And that's pretty much it. Then I think I'm going to get the jack under this and roll it back up under there, see if I can get it lifted up. That might be, that's going to be a lot worse than dropping it, that's for sure. I started scooting it in there. I forgot to turn the camera on. That was real sketchy until I got it up there to where the springs sort of sit in their seats. Now they're sort of helping to support it a little bit. I can't believe that went in there as easy as it did. Something's wrong. I'm going to end up pulling it back out. I just know it. I just can't believe it. It went up in there as easy as it did. Like, there's got to be something wrong. I mean, I got all 4 bolts in, 4 main bolts, and then those 2 plates in the front that I hoped I wouldn't have to take off before. I did have to take off. I got those are held on by 2 bolts. I got all them in. All right, so I think last night I quit about 1:30, something like that in the morning. And you know, we were at a good stopping spot. So I came back out this evening. I've been out here for a couple hours again. And so far, what I've done is, I think we saw, or I think you guys could see that I got the 4 main mounting bolts for this thing. You know, the 4 big bolts that hold pretty much the whole assembly up to the body. We got those mounted last night, and then tonight I've just been hooking up all the little stuff. So, like, I crawled up under there, put the 4 bolts back in the drive shaft. I clipped the ABS sensor wire. It's just that 1 wire clip. So I just snapped that back together. Then mostly what I've been fooling with is the junkyard had cut the e-brake or parking brake lines. So I unbolted those off the newer assembly, and you know, 1 bolt holds them to that backing plate, and then pulled off the rotor and then unclipped. I think I showed you the little clips. This little mechanism is what fastens that cable. It gets pinned on, so that yoke of that cable goes over here. This pin holds the yoke of the cable to this mechanism. That slides together like that, and that's what captures the pin in there. And then there's this little clip that slides over top of it. And then this sits between the brake shoes and works like that. When that cable pulls, it forces this out, and that's what spreads the shoes. So that's how that mechanism works behind here. Then it was just a matter of unbolting. The junkyard had clipped. They just clipped the brake line. So it was just a matter of the 2 bolts that hold the caliper on. And then I just had my calipers hanging off to the side. We're going to use my calipers. We're going to use my rotors. And I'll just have a spare set of calipers. The pads on these things look pretty good. Actually, the rotors look pretty good. I just about used their rotors, but that one looks a little shinier than the other one did. I don't know if something was going on with that, because this clip was loose rolling around inside that rotor. So that should not have been loose in there, so it's a little bit bent up. I don't know what the deal was there. Maybe that happened at the junkyard. So we got the brakes all put back together. We got it clipped together for the wire. We put these little things, they're kind of loose on there. I think they were kind of loose on there before. That's just 2 bolts now holding those together. Should have been 3, but this one broke when I took it off, and the one on the other side had already been broke. So that's just a minor thing. You probably wouldn't even have to put them on if you didn't have to, or if you didn't want to. Well, I looked at where those plugs are, and the exhaust is nowhere near where those fill and drain plugs are on that differential. So I thought, while I got this thing jacked up as high as I do, I'd just go ahead and put the exhaust back in. So it was just a matter of, sliding it back into the rubber mounts back here, and then up there use the jack to sort of stabilize the front end, and grab my little MIG welder, and I feel like I did a pretty decent job. I don't know if you guys can see that. There you go. So just welded it back together, and now I'll go ahead and put the wheels on it, drop it down on the ground, and we'll check that differential fluid. All right, well, you can see I got the wheels on it, and I dropped it down, and that tire's flat. It wasn't flat when I took it off of there, so I got to looking. Here, there's a screw in it. Right there's a Phillips screw stuck in the darn thing. So that is a funny coincidence that, it was this side, the frame's rotted out, and I go to put this wheel back on, and I got a leaky tire. So I'm going to get my plug kit out, take care of that. Just one more thing. All right, so we're down on all 4 wheels. I went ahead and plugged that other tire. No big deal there. It just had a, looks like a drywall screw. Anyhow, I'm under it now, checking the differential fluid, and there's the plug. It's got a little bit of smudge on it, a little bit of glitter there. I'm not going to say that's a scary amount, though. I do want to show you guys the setup for getting these plugs out, because I'm telling you, these were a bear to get out. The bottom one, the drain plug, was no problem at all, but the fill plug, gee whiz. I don't know what the hell this thing is. This plastic box it blocks the way of the of your access, because there's that hole. I think I showed you guys. There's a hole in the subframe to get at the plug. It's a straight shot through the subframe to get at that plug, but this stupid thing is blocking that hole. So how I got that out was, again, the bottom one, you can see that's no problem at all, but the top one is a real bear. So how I got it out was this, and it's a 10 millimeter is the size of the Allen head. So you kind of finagle this, back this into the hole in the frame, and then you work it into the plug, and
I take that back. First thing you do is take a 10mm wrench, slide it over the hex part. Then you work the socket up into the frame, push the hex part into the plug itself, and then I couldn't even get enough leverage with another wrench on this one. These suckers were in there tight. I had to get a hammer and whack the wrench to break it loose. Once it broke loose, then take it all back apart, and then I was able to reach up there and thread it out by hand with this again. But look into getting one of these. I guess if you had a big Allen wrench, you could maybe do it with a big Allen wrench, but I don't have any 10mm Allen wrenches. This was the closest thing I had. So, or really do this when it's out of the car. But there again, you're going to have it leveled to do it. So, or just be ready that it's going to be a pain in the butt once you do have it in the car. So I'm going to go ahead and let this drain. I'm going to get a plastic hose. I'll tell you how I'm going to fill it. I already know how I'm going to do it. I'm going to put the drain plug back in, and then they make a fill pump for gear lube. It's for boat out drives, and I use it all the time on my boats, but it comes in real handy for stuff like this. I keep it over here in this grungy stuff. So this little apparatus, you can pick these up at Walmart even. This has got the same threads in it as a 1-pint gear oil. So you unscrew that cap, drop that sucker right in there, and then it's a pumper with a plastic line. That thread is for the outboard out drive. But you know, I'll just stick that in the hole. I'm going to drop that in there, and that's how I'm going to fill it up. So pick yourself up one of these. You're going to need it. Well, I don't know if you can hear it making noises as it's cooling down a little bit, but I just took it for a test drive and I put it through its paces, and the thing is handling just fine. There's no weird noises, nothing out of the ordinary. I got no lights on, so I was, you know, a little bit concerned that those wheel speed sensors or ABS sensors or whatever that is in the rear end, I was a little bit concerned about those. Maybe, you know, got jostled around in all the commotion of, you know, taking it out, putting it back in, or if something didn't get snapped together right on the clips or something. But no lights, no issues, no nothing. The thing is doing great. And before, with, you know, when it was rotted out, the old part, if you'd really hit the brakes hard, you could kind of feel the rear end sort of shift. And then if you stomp the gas all at once from a takeoff, you could kind of feel the rear end shift sideways just a little bit. So, and again, I just took it out and I did all those things. You know, I kind of torture tested it, and it feels absolutely great. So, if you guys are looking to do this yourselves, hopefully I give you sort of a, you know, a good representation of what it'd take to do it. This was just me working out here with basic hand tools. And the only, you know, having this little kit was kind of handy. Other than that, it was just sockets and wrenches. I did need a stubby. I used a stubby wrench to get the one PTO or the drive shaft bolt. Other than that, it was all regular tools. So lots of penetrating oil. If you're going to do this, it took me last night. By the time I got started and everything, was about 7 p.m. And I think I worked till about 2 a.m. And that was removing the whole rear end structure and then, you know, mounting those 4 main mounting bolts of the new one back in. So that took me about 7 hours to do that last night. And then tonight, I started on it about 6, and it's almost 11, but I just did a little test drive, so and I had to fool that tire plug. So say it took probably about 10:30 time I got done. So that's about 4.5 hours. So 7, 4.5, 11.5 hours for one regular guy that's never done this before, that watched a YouTube video or two. I'm pretty happy with that. And given the cost of the thing, you know, like I said, my local shop wanted $4,130. And it took me 11.5 hours of labor, but the parts only cost me $700.70 with tax.
I did have to buy some penetrating oil because I didn't have any on the shelf, but that was it. So I just saved myself a few $1,000s doing it myself, and I couldn't be happier. I hope I helped you with this one, guys. I know I get long-winded, but I'm just trying to help the next guy that might be looking at this as a very daunting task. Looking back on it now, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. So I got lucky, I'm sure, on a lot of things. You know, I didn't have real broken bolt issues. So, you know, maybe I got lucky. I'll take it. I'll take all the help I can get. I'd rather be lucky than good any day. So I hope I helped you with this one. If I did, click that thumbs up button. If you want to see more videos of me working all kinds of stuff out here in the shop, click the subscribe button. Until the next time, keep on tinkering.